this exciting journey of architecture, urban and regional planning. My name is Manoj and I'm an architect and urban planner. Architecture and urban planning are not only my professions but my passion as well. So I am here to share this journey of my passion through this series of detailed course titled as Introduction to Urban and Regional Planning. Whether you are an architect, an urban planner, or a student looking for the opportunities, and an individual looking to delve into the dynamics of urban and regional planning, this course is designed for you. Urban and regional planning is like creating spaces that we live in and also creating the spaces for the future communities, and it's about shaping our environments into a vibrant, sustainable and informative space. From the skyscrapers that define the skyline of the city to the cozy environments that we call as home, every aspect of built environment has a plan and a purpose. So we'll delve into the fundamentals of urban design, zoning regulations, transportation systems and much more. Whether you are interested in the history of human development or human settlement, or state-of-the-art trends in context of the urban and regional planning, this course is for you. This course will not just be about the theoretical concepts, but about the practical aspects as well. And ultimately, by the end of this course, you'll have a solid understanding of urban and regional planning, and you'll be able to see the world with a different perspective. So let us embark this journey together. This journey would be called as the journey of creating spaces and understanding the context of urban and regional planning. This journey of urban and regional planning, our first lecture would be about the human geography, its nature and scope. The context of human geography, its nature and scope will be helpful in the understanding of the base of urban planning, because some way or the other, the geographical aspect leads to the development of urban geography, and ultimately by which we shall be getting the details of urban and regional planning. So in this lecture, we shall be understanding about the basics of human geography and its classification that lead to the development of urban and regional planning. So by the understanding of human geography, we shall be leading to the details of urban and regional planning. So let us start this journey of basics of human geography, its nature and its scope. In this particular lecture, we shall be having an idea of human geography, its nature and scope. Moving on, we shall be understanding about the various scholars who define the human geography. Then we shall be understanding the nature or detailed aspects of nature of human geography. Post that, we shall be looking on to the different thoughts on human geography, and then fields and subfields attached to human geography, and then ultimately the definitions of urban area, which particularly be helping us to lead to the foundational understanding of urban and regional planning. So moving on, first of all, we shall be exploring the human geography, its nature and its scope. While exploring the human geography, its nature and its scope, we tend to understand that geography is a fascinating field delving into the intricate interplay between humanity and its surroundings. This discipline is categorized into two primary branches: पहली ब्रांच होगी द फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी. The physical geography examines the Earth's natural features, which contains the elements such as mountains, plains, valleys, plateaus, and the atmosphere, and ultimately the ocean. Then next हमें पता लगता है ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी के बारे में, जो कि ज्योग्राफी का पहला एस्पेक्ट और दूसरा एस्पेक्ट कवर करते हैं. द ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी ऑन द अदर हैंड रिवॉल्व्स अराउंड द प्रेजेंस ऑफ मैनकाइंड across the Earth's surface and the activities that they engaged in. So basically, human geography in totality is to understand about the relationship of man with the nature. And moving on, we tend to understand that within the human geography, the discipline further branches out into two distinctive realms, and that will be the systematic geography and the regional geography. So the systematic geography comprehensively explored the dynamic relationship between human and its activities with the environment. Or basically in systematic geography, we are involved in the ideas of economy and the kind of activity that we do in the urban or regional areas. And the regional geography would more of concerned with the understandings of formation of regions and to understand the land use management in the context of urban or regional area. So this exploration aims to, in a way, unravel the interactions that defines the coexistence of mankind with the environment, and the duality of physical and human geography provides a holistic approach with the interaction of man with the planet's complex tapestry. Moving on, we shall be looking at the nature of human geography, in which, first of all, it becomes important to understand various standpoints or definitions that are articulated by different scholars. So in this understandings, we get to know that human geography has been articulated by different scholars, each offering a distinctive perspective. So the very first perspective has been given by Friedrich Ratzel, who describes human geography as the amalgamation of studies delving into the interconnectedness between human societies and Earth's surface, which basically means the interconnection of the human society with the Earth's surface. Whenever we are going to talk about the geography in context of its relationship with the environment and in context to the man, it would be termed as the human geography. Moving on, according to the LNC sample, human geography explores the evolving dynamics between the ever-changing human population and the inherently unstable Earth, which also means to, in a way, understand the interconnectedness or interrelationship of Earth's surface and man. And thirdly, and importantly, Vidal Lablache conceptualizes human geography as a discipline that introduces a novel understanding of intricate relationship between Earth and humanity. So in totality or a broader sense, the field of human geography encapsulates a holistic comprehension of governing principles underlying the interrelationship between living beings and their physical environments. And the way the scholars have been identifying the criterias of definitions makes us understand that human geography is nothing but the interrelationship of a man with its environment, and various kinds of activities that we do in our environment tends to make the ideas of human geography. Moving on, now as we know that the human geography is dedicated exploration between the intricate play of the physical environment and the socio-cultural environment shaped by the human interactions. The field of human geography delves into the mutual influence exerted by humans being on each other as they navigate their surroundings, by which we tend to understand in totality that human geography is nothing but to understand the idea of how a man lives in his environment and how the socio-cultural human interactions are formed based on the impacts of environment that we get to live in. So furthermore, in the context of human geography, there are two important aspects that are important to be looked upon, and those are naturalization of humans and humanization of nature. Because some way or the other, the humans are developing themselves in the context of nature, and as we are moving with the developments, the nature is also becoming humanized. So in this context, the evolution of human societies and their interaction with the environment has led to a reciprocal process of naturalization and humanization. Instances such as discovery of fire through the understanding of friction and heat, insights into DNA and genetics in disease management, the advancement in aviation through the comprehension of aerodynamics exemplify this dynamic relationship of man and nature, of how we naturalize as humans and how we humanize the nature by evolving the science and the physical environment around us. Then there is this term called as environmental determinism, in which the ancient times has to have that primitive societies which were profoundly influenced by powerful natural forces, and at lower levels of technology, human activities were entirely directed by or dictated by nature, promptly the early societies to worship the natural elements importantly, and the interaction underscores the environmental influence on the human endeavors or behaviors towards the cultural environments, by which we mean that the kind of environments that we get to live in is something that we shape out of our cultural relationship, and we form a socio-cultural layer in that environment that the nature has given to us. So in this way, human tends to determine the approach or the kind of function that is going to be done, or in a way the nature is to be used. So this concept would be called as environmental determinism in the context of human geography. This slide we had an eye on the environmental determinism, and now it becomes important to understand the concept of possibilism, in which as the time progressed, the human understanding of the environment deepened and the societies began to create possibilities using resources from their own surroundings and out of the technological advancements. The technological development allowed for the modification of nature, leading to the innovations such as health resorts, urban sprawl, seaports, and satellites in the spatial context. So this idea of possibilism helps us to understand the context that the technology is driving the totality of human intervention towards the environment or the surrounding, whereas in the case of environmental determinism, it was the human socio-cultural interrelationship that was driving the whole of the environment. So that becomes the basic difference between the environmental determinism and the possibilism, where we see possibilities based on the technologies that we develop and then ultimately form our surroundings. Moving on, we understand the concept of neo-determinism and stop-and-go determinism, which was introduced by Griff Taylor, and this concept meditates between environmental determinism and possibilism, which emphasizes that humans can harness the forces of nature by aligning their actions with its rhythms, and development pursuits should heed the signals from nature first of all, ensuring that possibilities are created without causing harm to environment. See, this context helps to understand that the possibilism or the environmental determinism could cause harm to environment, whereas in the case of new determinism and stop and go determinism, we firstly have to have a look on the technologies that are available, and at the same time those technologies are not causing harm to the environment. That is why it is in between the possibilism and the ultimate environmental determinism. This approach recognizes the importance of regional development and have an eye on the consequences like ozone layer depletion, global warming, and land depletion. And it underscores the idea that progress should be mindful and sustainable, and ultimately causing the irreversible damage to natural worlds, etc. So that is how we understood the concept of environmental determinism, possibilism, and the neo-determinism or the stop and go determinism, which are important in the context of human geography. Moving on, there are these ideas or the corridors through that human geography evolution has been growing, or through this understanding, we shall be learning about the development of human geography with time. So earlier there was a little interaction between different societies and the knowledge about each other was limited because there were no resources to in a way share the knowledge from one end to another. And then ultimately travelers and explorers used to share information about the areas of their visits back in the ancient eras because it was not that easy to travel at that moment, and navigational skills were not developed, and voyages were full of dangers, which in a way is obvious. So the late 15th century witnessed attempts in the explorations in Europe, and slowly the myths and mysteries about the countries and people started to open up. And that is how the development of human geography as a field has grown up. We can say that the era of 15th century or late 15th century or early 16th century tends to form a base of the uh, in a way interaction of knowledge regarding the human geography, which ultimately set a base for the development of modern urban planning in the late 16th to early 17th century, when the industrial revolution formed a part of the area in the Europe. So from that part, the colonial period provided an impetus for the further exploration to assess the region's resources and obtain information. And in a way, it could be said that the base of urban planning was set in Europe, because through this understanding we learned the fact that the idea of human geography settled or concreted in the early 15th or late 15th century in the context of Europe, and then also the industrial revolution happened post that development of interaction of knowledge in the context of human geography, which in a way could be act as the base for the modern urban planning. So in totality, that is how the whole criteria of human geography through the time after the 15th century has been developing. We shall be learning about the details or the in a way era for the urban planning in a very detailed way starting from the ancient time, because for now it is just important to look at the development of modern urban geography or human geography, and so that we would be able to understand of how and when the modern urban planning started. Moving on, these are the disciplines or the subfields that are related to the human geography, which in a way form a relation to the urban and regional planning. So from this concept, you can understand that how social geography is acting as a subfield to the human geography, and under which we tend to understand the behavioral geography, the geography of social well-being, the geography of leisure, the cultural geography, the gender geography, the historical geography, the medical geography, and in a way the
associated disciplines are also attached, like the behavioral geography is attached with the psychology, the geography of social well-being is attached with the welfare economics, the geography of leisure is attached with the sociology, and the cultural geography is attached with the anthropology. The gender geography is also attached again with the sociology, anthropology, and the women's studies. The historical geography is attached with the history, and the medical geography is attached with the epidemiology. So, in this way, we tend to understand that geography is giving rise to new disciplines, and ultimately, it is to some extent interconnected to the other disciplines as well. So, moving on, in the context of urban geography, we tend to understand that there are some subfields like population geography, settlement geography, and economic geography, which form a part of the urban geography. So, from this interconnection, we shall be understanding about how the geographical understanding forms relation with the urban and regional planning, and what is the total, in a way, could be said as the output of that whole setup in terms of the urban geography. So while we shall be understanding about the urban geography, we tend to know that there are various urban studies and planning studies that are associated with this subfield of urban geography. Then in context of population geography, we talk about the demography, and in context of settlement geography, we talk about the urban and rural planning. And in context of the economic geography, we tend to understand about the geography of industries, which in a way is associated with the industrial economics. And then we talk about the geography of tourism, which is also associated with the tourism and travel management. And then moving on, the geography of international trade is there, which helps us to understand about the international trade. And the geography of resources is interconnected with the field of resource economics. So from this whole understanding or interrelationship, it becomes important to have an eye on that certainly the subfields of human geography are making us to understand the base or the, in a way, outer circle of the urban planning, because these dimensions like urban studies and planning, demography, urban and rural planning, industrial economics, or international trades would surely be forming a part of the bigger domain that is called as urban and regional planning. So that is how, in totality, this whole picture now becomes clear of how geography is giving rise to the urban and regional planning. And that is why it becomes important to understand the concept of human geography as a base. Because, in a way, if we are not able to understand the human geography as a discipline of why we are looking at the interrelationship of man with the environment, we will not be able to give rise to the discipline called as the urban and regional planning. So whenever you are going to look at the base or the start of the urban and regional planning as a discipline, you have to start with the ideas of human geography, because the subfields associated in the human geography would surely be giving rise to the ideas of urban and regional planning in detail. So that is how these subfields are interconnected with the concept of geography and the concept of urban and regional planning. So moving on, now there are various school of thoughts in the human geography that we shall be having a look upon. So the very first human thought, or the thought in the human geography, is the welfare or humanistic school of geography, whose primary focus is the social well-being of people and concerns are housing, health, and education. And then moving on, there is this second school called radical school of thought, which of which the objective is the explanation of causes behind poverty, because in a way it helps to provide resources to those people who are in a way radicalized to the towards the poverty, or they want the socially deprived people to be developed in context to the overall urban development. And then in totality, the idea of social inequality shall be in a way removed from the urban or regional areas, and the idea of social equality shall be involving in the overall sustainable urban development. And moving on, the third and the last school of thought is behavioral school of thought, which emphasizes on the experience and perception of space based on the social categories like ethnicity, race, and religion, which in a way means that whenever we are going to talk about the urban and regional planning, we shall be looking on the behavioral aspect of the human being or the sociological aspect, and from that perspective we shall be able to learn about the details of urban and regional planning, which would ultimately be helping us to decide the perception of space based on the social categories. So that is how in totality these three school of thoughts form. Moving on, we tend to have the idea of ultimately the urban context of or the urban area, because now it becomes important to understand of how an urban area is formed or what is being called as an urban area. It tends to have differentiated dimensions or definitions as far as the country level is concerned, because more than half of the population of world is now urban, and the numbers are increasing at a swift pace, and it becomes essential to know how a population is classified as being urban as opposed to being rural or tribal or any other type. The simplest definition of an urban population is that of the population residing in the towns and cities, but which place qualifies as the town and the city, or which place qualifies as the urban area. So now this becomes an important question, because from the context of gate exam of architecture and urban and regional planning, or the student of urban and regional planning or architecture must be aware of the definition or the clear definition of a town or an urban area, because there are certain dimensions that are being involved in the explanation of dimension uh, of the urban area, and which would be the population size, population density, the economic base, and the presence of municipal body. So while making the definition for the urban area, we shall be having a look on these many factors, and on the base and on the behalf of which we shall be applying the definitions of urban area. And moving on, in the Indian context, we tend to understand that the census defines an urban area as one with the population more than 5,000 persons, the population density over the 400 persons per square kilometer, and 75% of the male population engaged in the non-agricultural occupations. So whenever somebody is going to ask you of what an urban area is, you have to keep in mind these three dimensions or aspects, that the population or the urban area would be termed as the area where the population is more than 5,000, and the population density is obviously more than 400 persons per square kilometer, and 75% of the total male population is engaged in the non-agricultural occupations. So that is how you tend to describe the definition of urban area in the Indian context. Moving on, different cities give the dimension of urban areas based on their impacts of the socio-cultural development and their personal environments. So we shall be understanding the definition of urban area and the criteria of the urban area associated with differentiated countries. So in the context of Australia, you can learn that the cluster of 1,000 people or more people and density of more than 200 persons per square kilometer would be termed as an urban area. And whereas in the context of Canada, we tend to understand that more than 400 people per square kilometer and more than 1,000 people would be there to form an urban area. In the context of China, the population density would be 1,500 persons per square kilometer. And in context of Sweden, it should be statistically defined localities, and population would be from 200 to 12 lakh, approximately 12 lakh or a million, around a million. In context of USC, the urbanized area would be termed as the area of having 50,000 people or more, and urban clusters with less than 50,000 of population. The South Africa would be having the places with some form of local authority, and then Brazil would be having the urban and suburban zones of administrative centers, and criteria for the urban area or the definition of urban area would be municipalities and the districts. And same is the case with Cyprus and Indonesia, where the places with urban characteristics and the urban areas defined by the local town plans would be defined as the urban areas. So, in a way, from this whole context, we tend to understand that there would be differences in the definitions provided by various countries or various administrative bodies based on their approach of interpretation of the area or the settlement, and on behalf of which they shall be providing the definition of an urban area. So it becomes important to first of all understand the definition of an urban area to give rise to the ideas of urban and regional planning. And as far as this whole slide is concerned, you would be able to understand about the definitions of urban area in with respect to the other countries, as well as we previously understood the context of urban area in the Indian domain. So that is all we have in this lecture, in which we understood about the details of nature and scope of the human geography and its interrelationship with the man and ultimately the urban and regional planning. And now we shall be summarizing this lecture with the quick recap of whatever we have discussed. So in this whole lecture, we understood about the first of all the base of the human geography, or to understand about the nature and scope of human geography, in which we understood the various typologies of how the human geography is formed, and discussed the concept of physical geography and then human geography, and then ultimately understanding of the regional geography and the systematic geography. Moving on, we discussed about the various scholars that define the human geography on the behalf of their understandings, and in which we discussed about the three scholars, and then ultimately we moved on to the details of nature of human geography, in which we talked about the environmental determinism, possibilism, and stop and go determinism. And then moving on, we discussed the different thoughts on the human geography, which were in the context of environment, social interaction, and social equality, poverty. So that is how we tend to understand about the different thoughts which were associated with the human geography. And moving on, importantly, we discussed about the fields and subfields of the human geography, which gave rise to the ultimate interconnection of the urban and regional planning to the human geography. And moving on, lastly, we understood the definitions of the urban area, which in a way helped us to understand of how an urban area is formed, and then ultimately of how the urban and regional planning would be done. Because to learn about the urban and regional planning at the very first hand, it becomes important to know the definition of an urban area. And we learned the definition of urban area with the context of other countries as well. So that is all we have in this class or this lecture, and we shall be starting with the details of the urban planning and its objectives, its aims, and its scope within the next lecture. And I hope that it was very informational for you. If in case you find this lecture very informational, please leave a comment. And in case you are well aware of the ideas that I have discussed in this lecture, please let me know about it so that I would be able to move to some more detailed aspects rather than talking about the basic ones. So thank you so much for watching this lecture and video. It would be helpful for me to understand your interpretations, and it would be nice of you to, if in a way you could please leave a comment after watching this video. So thank you so much. That is all we have in this lecture. See you soon in the next lecture regarding the introduction of urban and regional planning. Thank you.